Welcome, everybody, to 52 Living Ideas. Today is a Comprehensivist Wednesday, and today we are discussing language, specifically metaphors. More specifically, the work of George Lakoff as a starting point. What I'm going to do is that I'm going to read a short section from the book called Orientational Metaphors, just to make the point of how pervasive metaphors are in language. And please keep track of all the questions and all the comments that you have, using pen and paper. And then I will call on everybody to make comments, ask questions, and we will have an interactive discussion. Always try to be concise. We have 4 rules that work beautifully for us. Number 1, type an exclamation mark in the chat when you want to speak or raise your hand in Zoom. Number 2, keep on topic. At each point of time, we'll be discussing only some things. Keep on that. Number 3, be concise. And number 4, be courteous. Feel free to disagree with anybody on anything, but do so courteously. All right, so with that, let's get started. I'm going to read the section from Lakoff's book, Metaphors We Live By. And this section is called Orientational Metaphors. It's a short section, maybe about 3 to 4 pages, but it gives you a very good flavor. It says, so far we have examined what we call structural metaphors, cases where one concept is metaphorically structured in terms of another. But there is another kind of metaphorical concept, one that does not structure one concept in terms of another, but instead organizes a whole system of concepts with respect to one another. We call these orientational metaphors, since most of them have to do with spatial orientation, up and down, in and out, front and back, on and off, deep and shallow, central and peripheral. These spatial orientations arise from the fact that we have bodies of the sort that we have, and that they function as they do in our physical environment. Orientational metaphors give a concept a spatial orientation. For example, happy is up, sad is down. The fact that the concept happy is oriented up leads to English expressions like I'm feeling up today. Such metaphorical orientations are not arbitrary. They have a basis in our physical and cultural experience. Though the polar oppositions, up and down, in and out, etc., are physical in nature, the orientational metaphors based on them can vary from culture to culture. For example, in some cultures, the future is in front of us, whereas in others, it is in the back. For example, we are always, in the West, we're always saying, okay, what am I going to do next? And we're trying to plan. So we're looking forward to the future, and the past is at the back. In some cultures, their focus is on saying, what is it that you know? And those things are in front of you, and those things are in the past. Whereas future, you do not know what it is going to come and grab you from behind. And that's how they think of future and the past. So it's very deep connections between how the orientation works and the general philosophy of life of cultures. Okay, we will be looking at up-down spatialization metaphors, which have been studied intensively by William Nagy. As an illustration, in each case, we will give a brief hint about how each metaphorical concept might have arisen from our physical and cultural experience. These accounts are meant to be suggestive and plausible, not definitive. So now let's go into it. Happy is up, sad is down. Now we're going to read a whole bunch of phrases connected to that. I'm feeling up. That boosted my spirits. My spirit rose. You're in high spirits. Thinking about her always gives me a lift. I'm feeling down. I'm depressed. He's really low these days. I fell into a depression. My spirit sank. Physical basis is drooling posture typically goes along with sadness and depression, and an erect posture with positive emotional state. Conscious is up, unconscious is down. Get up, wake up. I'm up already. He rises early in the morning. He fell asleep. He dropped off to sleep. He's under hypnosis. He sank into a coma. Physical basis, humans and most other animals, most other mammals sleep lying down, stand up when they awaken. Health and life are up, sickness and death are down. He's at the peak of health. Lazarus rose from the dead. He is in top shape. As to his health, he's way up there. He fell ill. He's sinking fast. He came down with the flu. His health is declining. He dropped dead. Physical basis. Serious illness forces us to lie down physically. When you're dead, you're physically down. Having control or force is up. Being subject to control or force is down. I have control over her. I'm on top of the situation. He's in a superior position. He's at the height of his power. He's in high command. He is in upper echelons. His power rose. His rank, he ranks above me in strength. He's under my control. He fell from power. His power is on the decline. He is my social inferior. He is low man on the totem pole. Physical basis. Physical size typically correlates with physical strength, and the victor in a fight is typically on the top. More is up, less is down. The number of books printed each year keeps going up. His draft number is high. My income rose last year. The amount of artistic activity in this state has gone down in the past year. The number of errors he made is incredibly low. His income fell last year. He is underage. You are too hot. Turn the heat down. Physical basis. If you add more to a substance or physical objects to a container or pile, the level goes up. Foreseeable future events are up and ahead. All upcoming events are listed on the page. What's coming up this week? I'm afraid what's up ahead of us. What's up? Physical basis. Normally, our eyes look in the direction in which we typically move ahead, forward. As an object approaches a person or a person approaches the object appears larger. Since the ground is perceived as being fixed, the top of the object appears to be moving upwards in the person's field of vision. High status is up, low status is down. He has a lofty position. He has a lofty position. She will rise to the top. He is at the peak of his career. He's climbing the ladder. He has upward mobility. He's at the bottom of the social hierarchy. She fell in status. Social and physical basis. Status is correlated with social power, and physical power is up. Good is up, bad is down. Things are looking up. We hit a peak last year, but it's been downhill ever since. Things are at an all-time low. He does high-quality work. Physical basis for personal well-being. Happiness, health, life, and control. The things that principally characterize what is good for a person are all up. Virtue is up, depravity is down. He is high-minded. She has high standards. She is upright. She is an upstanding citizen. That was a low trick. Don't be underhanded. I wouldn't stoop to that. That would be beneath me. He fell into abyss of depravity. That was a low down thing to do. The physical and social basis. Good is up for a person, physical basis, together with a metaphor that we will discuss below. Society is a person in the version where you are not identifying with your society. To be virtuous is to act in accordance with the standards set by the society or a person to maintain its well being. Virtue is up because virtuous actions correlate with social well being from the society's or person's point of view. Since socially based metaphors are part of the culture, it's the society or person's viewpoint that counts. Rational is up, emotional is down. Discussion fell to an emotional level, but I raised it back to the rational plane. We put our feelings aside and had a high level intellectual discussion on the matter. He couldn't rise above his emotions, physical and cultural basis. In our culture, people view themselves as being in control over animals, plants, and their physical environment. And it is their unique ability to reason that places human beings above other animals and gives them this control. Control is up, thus providing a basis for man. For man is up, and therefore rational is up. Conclusions. On the basis of these examples, we suggest that following conclusions about experiential grounding, the coherence, and systemicity of metaphorical concepts. Most of our fundamental concepts are organized in terms of one or more spatialization metaphors. There is an internal systemicity to each spatialization metaphor. For example, happy is up defines a coherent system rather than a number of isolated random cases. An example of an incoherent system would be where you say, I'm feeling up meant I'm feeling happy, but my spirits rose meant you felt sadder. There is an overall external systemicity. There is an overall external systemicity among the various specialization metaphors, which define coherence among them. Thus, good is up gives up orientation to general well-being, and this orientation is coherent with spatial cases like happy is up, health is up, alive is up, control is up, status is up, and is coherent with control is up. Specialization metaphors are rooted in physical and cultural experience. They are not randomly assigned. A metaphor can serve as a vehicle for understanding a concept only by the virtue of its experiential basis. Some of the complexities of the experiential basis of a metaphor are discussed in the following section. There are many possible physical and social bases for metaphor. Let me just see how much I want to go. Yes, I'm going to go a little bit more. There are many possible, it's going to be only about 2-3 minutes more. There are many possible physical and social bases for metaphor. Coherence within an overall system seems to be a part of the reason why one is chosen and not another. For example, happiness also tends to correlate physically with a smile and general feeling of expansiveness. This could, in principle, form a basis of metaphor. Happy is wide, sad is narrow. And in fact, there are minor metaphorical expressions like I'm feeling expansive that pick out a different aspects of happiness than I'm feeling up or does. But the major metaphor in our culture is happy is up. There is a reason why we speak of the height of ecstasy rather than breadth of ecstasy. Happy is maximally coherent with good is up. In some cases, specialization is so essential a part of the concept that it is difficult for us to imagine any alternative metaphor that might structure the concept. In our society, high status is such a concept. Other cases like happiness are less clear. Is the concept of happiness independent of happy is up metaphor? Or is the up and down specialization of happiness a part of the concept itself? We believe that it is a part of the concept within a given conceptual system. Happy is up metaphor places happiness within a coherent metaphorical system, and part of its meaning comes from its role in that system. So-called purely intellectual concepts, the concepts in scientific theory, are often, perhaps always, based on metaphors that have physical basis and cultural basis or cultural basis. The high in high energy particle is based on more is up. High in high level functions, as in physiological psychology, is also based on rational is up. Low in low level phonology, which refers to detailed phonetic aspects of sound systems of language, is based on mundane reality. Mundane reality is down, as down to earth. The intuitive appeal to scientific theory has to do with how well its metaphors fit one's experience. Our physical and cultural experience provides many possible bases for specialization metaphors. Which ones are chosen and which ones are major may vary from culture to culture. It is hard to distinguish the physical from the cultural basis of a metaphor, since the choice of one physical basis from among many possible ones has to do with cultural coherence. All right, so that's the reading. Now, would like any comments you would have on the nature of metaphors themselves. You can ask questions, you can make comments, but in any case, be concise, because I want to get as many thoughts on the table as possible so we can have a very productive discussion. And once we have had like the first round of comments and questions, let's see if we can see any patterns in what people are bringing up, and we can focus on what we need to focus on. So go ahead and type an exclamation mark or raise your hand in Zoom in order to talk about metaphors or ask any questions about this particular passage. See, I'm going to start. Give me just a second. Let's start with Victoria. Victoria, go ahead.
Hey. Hi, sorry, I was gonna just, start the video for this.
Okay.
I will try to be concise, I guess.
No, please, Victoria, you've done a master's on this topic, so go ahead and take up to 5 minutes. Go ahead.
Well, that's exactly, I don't want to speak for 5 minutes, and maybe then you also have something that you're going to talk about later. But I guess the important thing that we can conclude from what you've just read is that metaphors are pervasive, and that not only they're like a nice way to talk about things, but actually we cannot do without them. So this is Lakoff and Johnson's point, even though the book is kind of messy, but they're trying to point out that our abstract thinking is so much dependent on our spatial orientation and our body experiences, because you just read about like up and down, but then they're also talking about temperature. For example, we have warm feelings for somebody or he was cold with me, and then, well, how are you going to do without a metaphor here? So you, like, when we talk about time, I'm sure you're going to talk about time. So there, I guess the takeaway from this first thing that you read is that we have to understand that we always think in metaphors, and so that's just something to, I guess, to pay attention to. I'm going to stop here. Maybe I'll pitch in later.
Perfect.
Thanks.
Please do. So I want to highlight two parts of what Victoria just said. Okay, one is that we cannot do without metaphors. This is a very deep point. Julian Jaynes makes this point that almost all concepts of consciousness actually arise in physical things, and you're using, for example, the concept of grasp, physical grasp, in order to grasp what is going on in here. And it goes on and on and on, whether it is thumos, which is the blood rising, which gives rise to the concept of courage. So moral concepts, psychological concepts, concepts about thought, all of them are based on metaphors. Metaphors are simply, you use something that you're more familiar with in order to point to something that you're less familiar with. They are pervasive throughout language. Language is basically metaphors, stacking up on metaphors. Unfortunately, we forget the sources of metaphors. We do not look at etymology. We do not look at history of words. Therefore, we use words as if, dead words, without seeing the life that is behind them. And understanding the metaphors behind language, behind words, is a way of understanding how human beings have learned to make sense of the world. So this is a very large issue. Next up is going to be Joe, Katie, and Madeline. Joe, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I just find it interesting as to how it does shape our perception of the world. The idea of in or out, like the in group or out group, and that actually automatically shapes your perception of how you're feeling. So then you start to have this idea, and this is all based on our metaphor, and it provides structure to the group itself. So that's the interesting part, where now if I just said group, it would, but if if you're part of the group or outside the group, then you start to understand where the boundaries are in things. And that's what I think is one of the most important things, that it helps us draw boundaries.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Joe. I mean, I will make a very quick point here. Actually, Lakoff and Julian Jaynes actually use the causality the reverse way. I think it kind of originated in the reverse direction, where there is naturally something of being kind of people being close versus not being close. And the in and out are physical concepts used to refer to that. Now, what ends up happening is that when people lose the actual meaning of it, those are used in a bad way when it is. So there is this loop going on between physical and forming concepts, and then the concepts being mechanically used wrongly without understanding the basis, which will cause all kinds of cognitive problems. But there is this two-way interaction that is going on. Thanks, Joe. Next up is going to be Katie, Madeline, and Victoria. Katie.
This is the first time I've started to understand what it means. Something means to be abstract, because this is something we're experiencing every day. To understand something abstract, meaning that something we can't experience with our own senses. And the question that I had was something like happiness is abstract, but you can see a smile. So I'm a little bit confused how a smile and happiness are related.
Okay, that's a beautiful, beautiful question. Okay, let's keep that as a question. Okay, anybody is is welcome to address it at any point of time. But so what we're trying to do is that we're trying to put on the table as many thoughts from as many directions as possible. We'll develop some of them and some of them later on. I'm trying to keep track of everything everybody's saying. Thank you, Katie. But great point. Next up is Madeline. Madeline, go ahead.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. I was having mic problems. So thanks so much, Shrikant. It was really cool to sit and just kind of be read to in real time and hear something so interesting. I appreciate it. So I had a couple of thoughts. One quick one, which is that we always think of the low man on the totem pole, but as it turns out, that's a European colonialist interpretation. It is actually the bottom figure on the totem pole that is the most important. It's the foundational element of everything above it. So I wanted to just say, when you talked about science, I know that this is something that comes up in philosophy of science. And the philosophers of science, of course, examine their own philosophies. And you can see things are arranged in levels from highest to lowest, or they're flowing from left to right, or there will be diagrams with things inside and outside. I mean, there just seems to be no way out of it. So then people think that formal logic, which is like A plus B equals C, or A plus B does not equal C, is just placeholders for numbers. But even the concept of a placeholder that you're going to put something into is still a sort of inside and outside thing. I think we just can't even get away from this.
Thank you, Madeline. Next time, make points one by one so you can have a dialogue between them. But there is just so many interesting things that you put on the table. It's clearly social, like the way in which, for example, the totem pole is seen by the people who came up with them. Their concept is something that is foundational that's the idea. As Lakoff makes it very explicit, just like, you can see future is forward or future is back. Important is foundation versus importance is the top. So that's a great point. And absolutely, science can't do without these metaphors, and also the direction in which you went, of saying that, look, it's not just words. Okay, it's also diagrams. So because when we draw something, we are actually trying to represent. It's like a simulation of physical things in diagrams, and you're trying to capture things in that. It's the same kind of a thing. It is human created artifact in order to capture something in reality. Wonderful. Thank you very much, Victoria. And then folks, go ahead and keep typing exclamation mark. Please make observations. Try to keep them in chunks, individual observations, so we can talk about them better. Go ahead, Victoria. You can address anything you want to address.
Sure. Yeah, I'm just going to address what Madeline said, then Joseph, and if I remember what Katie was saying, I'll try to do. So, Madeline or Madeleine, sorry if I mispronounced your name. Next time, guys, next time you say something like "there's no way out" or "we cannot get away from it," you can think that, well, those are spatial metaphors in themselves. So basically, we are discussing metaphors. It's kind of like an interesting thing to think about, that we use them without even thinking about them. I was actually going to piggyback on something that Joseph said, so about perception. And something that I found fascinating when I was reading. Yeah, so basically the metaphors we have, like up and down, warm and cold, whatever, they are based on what we are, what kind of body we have. So imagine if we were bats, then we might have a totally different notion of up and down. And we might have some kind of, I don't know, like sound or ultrasound related metaphors, right? Or like if we could fly, then we would have like 3D metaphors, where we now have like 2D metaphors up and down, So it's kind of like you could think of, I mean, it's fascinating.
Victoria,
Or
let me throw in one thing here. We did one of the meetups where somebody looked at the consciousness, what we know about the consciousness of octopi. Now that is a very radically different, because you have these multiple eyes and multiple sensors, and it's coming from you all over the place. Go ahead.
So yeah, or let's say we were bees, because right now we each of us, we understand ourselves as an individual being, right? If we're a beehive, then we might have had something totally different, and that's something that I find mind-blowing. So I'm thinking, if we ever meet some aliens, we might not be able to understand each other if they don't look like us. Madeline was talking, Katie, I think, was asking about happiness, and she said, well, happiness is abstract. I'm going to disagree politely. I think happiness is physical. When we are happy, we can feel it in our bodies. I mean, of course, what is happiness? There have been books about it, so it's a concept, but there are physical manifestations of happiness, and each of us know at least some things that make us happy. So there's quite a lot of physical and concrete about it as well. And what was Madeline talking about? I don't remember anymore, but it's okay. No, it's a fun conversation. I'll just shut up for now. Thanks.
Sounds good. So, wonderful. And again, folks, try to keep it to like 1 point or 2 points, because then otherwise people are not able to talk about what you've said, because you say so many interesting things that people lose context of the first ones that you said. And it basically, and the beautiful thing is that it's a very simple mechanism. You just keep putting exclamation mark, you come back and make your second point. Okay. And what I want to do is I'm going to go with the comments, and then I'm going to now, after anybody who wants to comment is done, I'm going to ask you, what questions do you have about metaphors? Okay. I don't think you understand. It's actually very difficult of seeing the full power of metaphors. Okay. I still don't get it, even if I've read all of this stuff, because it's really, really powerful. So what questions do you have about metaphors? So once we have done with all the comments, that's the thing that I'm going to come to. So please keep your questions ready. Next up is going to be Joe, followed by Ava. Joe.
Yeah, I'm just going to make one quick comment, and that is that not only does it allow us to perceive things, but it allows us to change our perception as well. in the sense that, let's take the example again of the idea of the in and out. You're part of the in crowd or the out crowd. So, well, wait a minute, what is good or bad? It's considered generally good or bad to be in or out, but then you can decide for yourself whether it's better to be out or in. And so that what it does is it kind of gives you a perception of how to actually change how your orientation and how you think about what is good or bad and to begin with. So I think that that's a really important point. It allows us to think critically about, who we are in the world as well.
Excellent point. So kind of building up on, CJ's favorite way of looking at this is multiple perspectives, right? Whenever you're talking about perspectives, actually you're using the physical basis of you looking at things from multiple angles. And when you are putting yourself in multiple positions and looking at it, it's actually challenging you to rethink things, because what happens is that the metaphors are physical experience in order to grasp the concepts. Now, when you change the physical basis, use a different metaphor for it, it actually makes you think about things better. I'll give you my favorite example of this. I had, when I came to America, I kind of immersed myself in English, but I did not know English until 7th grade. So my Marathi, the language I grew up speaking, is very, very good. But I had lost the habit of using it. And I would write a lot in English. And one day I was going back to India and I wanted to see, what of Marathi is left in me. And I said, I'm going to think about the same topics like the one that we're talking about, but I'm going to try to write about it in Marathi. And it was the most incredible experience, because what happens is that each language, the symphony of its metaphors is different, and it plays different music. So what ends up happening is that when you're trying to hold the same thing, one with right hand and one with left hand, it's like two different languages. So the grip is different. The set of concepts that you're using, set of metaphors that you're using in order to grapple with the same thing is different. And you actually understand a lot more about what you're looking at, what you're trying to grasp, because of the differences in metaphor. And you say, does this capture it better or does this capture it better? It seems to capture a difference. The connotations are different. Not only the denotations, even though the denotations are same, many times denotations are also different. The connotations are all different. And then you say, okay, what connotations are better at capturing what I'm capturing? So it's the most fascinating experience. Thank you, Joe. Next up is Eva. Eva, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I just want to briefly say that for me, it's like, somehow a creative process of translating our embodied experience, our lived experience. And that also reflects how we can manipulate or be flexible in the language that we are using. Because if we are, not competent enough in the language, also becomes an obstacle to be able to translate. So it's a high cognitive function in a way. And that's why sometimes hard for people that are more literal to create or understand the metaphors, because of the cognition that's more rigid. Okay. Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Eva. I'll say a couple of things. So firstly, I liked how you started with embodied experience, because that's a very crucial part of metaphors. It's not just one directional. It's physical reality that you're using in order to form something in your mind, but then you're using that in order to manipulate the physical thing. So there is a loop going on between reality and your mind using this. And that is crucial to having it. It's not an intellectual exercise. Language is not a pure intellectual exercise. It is a way of changing the world, of changing society, impacting other people, and building things in the world. So there is that loop going on, which you can never forget. So that's all I want to say. Anybody else has comments? Otherwise, would love to hear more questions on the table. Victoria, you're next. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I was just going to comment on what you said and what the who was it, Ava said about difficulties, right? Because you said how fascinating it is to change, to change the metaphors that you're using depending on the language. But even in one language, you can change the metaphors. And this is what Lakoff is going to write about later. And he's going to call it framing. So you're going to frame one issue, or let's say one something in some kind of terms, right, metaphorical terms, and then people are going to think of it as dangerous. And you can frame the same thing as adventurous and exciting. And so then, of course, it's fascinating and it's very cool, but I wonder if we can actually find one true meaning of a concept like this, right? Because depending on the framing, I think Ava mentioned manipulation. We can actually manipulate people depending on the metaphors we use to get them to understand something. People can, kind of have a different perception of some ideas. And actually, I find it frustrating in terms of finding meaning. And so we have been talking about up and down, like well and unwell, whatever. And those seem to be more or less universal. But then we also have different cultures with different metaphors. Like somebody said that, whatever is at the lowest level in First Nations is actually like foundational rather than, like inferior. Or like Lakoff was writing, for example, we see an argument as a fight, right? Like a battle, we need to attack, we need to defend our arguments. The Japanese see an argument as a dance. They don't use fighting metaphor, they use dance metaphor. So then when two cultures meet, is it ever possible to like truly understand each other? And that's a question to everybody.
All right, wonderful. So let's begin that with questions. So given that metaphors are different from culture to culture, can cultures understand one another? That's one of the questions. Folks, go ahead and type an exclamation mark to put as many questions. Only like, don't put like six questions, put 1 or 2 questions per person. And then we will go ahead and discuss some of them. I want to know what is on people's mind. What is it that you get? What is it that you find interesting? What would you like to know more about? This is a very deep subject. Joe, go ahead. What's your question?
I would like to get everybody's thoughts on something that I think about quite often is what are the limits of metaphors?
Wonderful. What are the limits of metaphors? Okay. Katie, what's your question?
Well, I was going to comment. Sorry, my attention span is not good right now. I was going to comment on Victoria's comment. Is that okay?
You can do that while everybody else gets ready for questions. Go ahead, Katie.
Well, I think that even in our own culture, we'll see different ideas. I think, and an example is evading my mind. But one I want to say it was like a distance metaphor, and someone else might want to make it an up-down schema. So like those two people might experience conflict between each other because one person, I just want to feel like it's just a flat thing. I'll just put the effort in, and the other person might make it seem like a better, worse thing.
Thank you. Thank you, Katie. Folks, questions, more questions, please. Go ahead and type an exclamation mark if you would like to ask, put some questions on the table. Otherwise, we'll start discussing, the questions that we have. So let's start with the cultural question. With more questions always preferred. Okay, if you have questions, go ahead and type a question mark so we know, and we'll give you priority. But DLJ, go ahead.
Hi, sound okay? You can hear me?
Yes.
Lovely. So here's a bit of a weird one, I think. Given that language is part of our communication system with each other, words, language, and they're not the only communication system. We have pheromones, how we communicate, body language, facial expressions without the words. Is there an equivalent in those languages of metaphor?
Okay, wonderful question. So is there equivalent of metaphors in other means of communication? Okay, anybody else? Questions, please. Otherwise, we'll start discussing. Let's start with culture. And it also relates to framing. Like, people have these different frames, and how do you communicate with one another? Given, I think, but let's start with cultures because it's the most extreme example. So how do you, given that each culture has different history of metaphors, how do you communicate with other cultures? Is it a completely lost cause? Are you going to have conflicts? Are conflicts inevitable? Is there a way of communicating? Is there something that you can do in order to communicate? What do you think? Go ahead and type an exclamation mark if you'd like to talk about, cultures. So let me start off. I will say, look, I mean, I consider the just a second. I don't know who this person is. Give me a second. So I would say I always see different cultures and different people as an asset rather than a problem, because they actually have different perspectives. It's the same idea of multiple perspectives that we have discussed in comprehensivism all the time. It just gives you, it's an invitation, very cheap way of getting a genuinely new take, a new angle on a deep issue. And you owe it to yourself to actually listen to the person. This applies not just to different cultures. Actually, each individual has its own history. And being able to try to listen to the people whose approaches are different and see, compare it to what you have, see if you can learn something from it. Though it is hard work, it's actually a very productive kind of a work. Even when at the end of it, you say, look, the way they are looking at it, I still think it's wrong. But I understand it now. But the connotations there are, it allows you to actually consider a different point of view. It allows you to reflect on the topic. So I consider this as a positive. And what we are actually living through is far more intimate connections between cultures than ever before. You have India talking to America. You have China talking to America. Each of these have very, very deep cultural history, which is captured in their language. And being open to them, we've been studying Tao Te Ching, we've been studying Bhagavad Gita, we've been studying the Bible. By the way, the Bible also is an example of the same thing. Different times have different metaphors. The emphasis, the entire constellation of metaphors that are there in 180 is different from today. And if you really pay attention to it, what it produces is what Owen Barfield calls a felt transformation of consciousness. You see a way of using your consciousness that you had not imagined before. And that experience is at once an aesthetic experience, an epistemological experience, a psychological experience, a metaphysical experience, ethical experience at the same time. So it's quite special. And that is handed to you on a platter if you're willing to take the effort of doing the translation work yourself. Translation here of metaphors, of trying to understand the metaphors and doing that. So that's my take. Let's go with Joe next. Joe.
I think it allows you to compare and contrast experiences. And I think that that's one of the most important things as to how to reconcile what those two, the differences, why they were, one culture arrived at one use of metaphors and the other culture arrived at their own. I thought you also brought up a really important point that I think is this cultural and time are both constraints to metaphors as well. So that when I think about the limitations of metaphors, that's a couple of the things that I was thinking about. But even if I were to think about it in terms of the way the Greeks would say, maybe Marcus Aurelius would write that it hasn't, to say that it's on borrow, it's been borrowed, you haven't lost something, it's been returned.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all, even to a person. But if you look at it in terms of something like the Gospel of John,
mm-hmm.
Is something very different, as how they're going to explain what it means to be returned or to rise from the dead. So these are two different concepts that you have here being explained for two different reasons, and you have to reconcile them as to why they're being said at that particular moment in time. And that understanding gives you an understanding of the culture itself. So that's the comparing and contrasting that we can do. It can span over time. I mean, it doesn't have to necessarily be simultaneous, where we're comparing, what one culture is saying at this particular moment in time, or at this particular, what culture is saying, this particular, right now. So I think this shows you the power of understanding metaphors, is that you compare and contrast ideas of death, and then you have a deeper understanding as the logic behind it that underpins it. And then you have an appreciation for what people are trying to express at that particular moment in time. And so and it would hold true still if it were the same time period.
Wonderful. Thank you, Joe. Let me use another metaphor, or that of map and territory. All of these are maps. So like different cultures have different maps of the territory, but as long as you're interested in the territory, then having multiple maps actually allows you to understand the territory better. If you are married to your map, if the map is more important to you than the territory, then the fact that the other person has a different map is a threat to you and is a competition to you. So it is the focus on the territory, and saying that this other person is also trying to map the same thing. Let's see the map. Let me compare the map. Let's see what is common, what is different. What can I learn? All of that. So I think map and territory is a useful way of thinking about this. Folks, comments on this cultural communication. And then we can, Victoria, you're welcome to answer your own question about cross-cultural communication. But anybody else wants to comment on that, go ahead and do so. Victoria, would you like to add something?
Hi, no, not right now. Sorry, I'm just trying to get ready for something. I'm listening in though.
Sure, no problem. Next up is Madeline. Madeline, go ahead.
Sure, thanks, Shrikant. So this is just an idle speculation. We think in terms of framing, just as filmmakers will frame a shot, or a painter might hold up a little thing that limits the scene to paint from. And so I'm just wondering if maybe Lakoff and Johnson address the question of if other cultures use a different term for metaphors than framing, because that too might even be part of our problem in communicating about them. Although I guess every culture has them.
Yeah, every culture has metaphors, and of course they use different names. It's like let's see. I was thinking of Marathi and other, but the thing is that you really need to know the etymology of each of these words, like metaphor. Where it comes from. It's best as I remember it. It is like pointing. Something that is pointing to something else, or transferring. Transferring is the root, I think. So metaphor, so going beyond what it is, So it's a way of kind of transferring. That's the connotation that I understand. All right. Let's take the next question, and that is about what are the limits of metaphor? No, DLJ, go ahead.
Yeah, that's the question I was thinking about. And I think it actually does, I think it relates back to the cultural question. So I've been, I'm going to use a metaphor. I've been a fish out of water for many years by living in Southeast Asia and traveling around down to Australia, up to Mongolia, all the way. And of course, I'm going to use my English metaphors like everybody understands what I'm talking about, because that's British arrogance for you. And they don't. And then, of course, the people I'm with are using Vietnamese or Hokkien or Chinese or Mongolian metaphors, and I'm going, So obviously there's a limit. Is the limit relates to the inability to communicate. In other words, the metaphor falls flat. That doesn't mean to say we can't come up with some bridging. Oh, there you go. There's another metaphor. Some common ground, if you like. So we just have to talk it through to get there. But the number of times I'll be looking at someone going, I didn't get that. And they look at me like, I didn't get that either. Yeah, we can fix it. But we have to step out of metaphor in order to be able to do it, or use other metaphors that we can both relate to. I think that's what we're talking about with limits, because it's about, again, communication.
Yeah, that's great. And I feel for you, because you're so used to making these really clever comments, and all of them have to be using the metaphor. So it's like, if the person doesn't get all of the part, it must be really hard. And also when the other person is saying, go ahead. Yeah, but also people assume you're clever if you're using metaphors they can't understand. So wisdom is assumed. So yeah. All right. So you get something from it. All right. Next up is Ava, followed by Victoria. Ava.
Yeah, I'd like just to follow up saying that this moment of not getting it can be a nice moment of shared learning, because that's what opens for conversation, dialogue, because we don't get it. So, it involves the other to explain and to share, and then as a way of understand the other culture, right? So it's also can be a moment of a misunderstanding, but also can be a moment of learning. All right. Yeah. Thank you.
Eva, that's a great observation, because we just assume that, okay, I'm talking to somebody and the other person understands me. But if you look at it, that you can understand them because they already had much of what you were saying, and that's why they got it. But if the other person has something that you do not have, then that is an opportunity for learning. It's a big opportunity for learning. And it is also not just what it is, but how it is approached. So excellent point. It is work. See, what happens is that, language is such an amazing tool, okay, that you take effort to learn it, and then it becomes automatic. And then when it becomes automatic, that's a great thing. Okay, it's a good thing, because then we can use that as a base for doing something higher. But at the same time, when you're doing it in an automatic way, you lose the consciousness of it. You lose many understanding of what actually is going on. And such encounters shake you up a little bit, and to make you look at something that is, again, using a metaphor, under the bonnet of the car that you're driving in. So thank you very much for bringing that up. Next up is Victoria. Victoria, go ahead.
So I guess I'm just going to respond to Ava, right? Ava was right before me. So yes, definitely this kind of difference in framing and difference in using metaphors could be a learning point, but only if the parts understand that they use a different framing, because sometimes when two cultures meet, they're not aware of these differences. It's like we are aware, right? We're talking about it, but it's kind of like preaching to a choir in a way, maybe. So, like, for example, if you talk to let's say a British person and your manager tells you, I am a bit unsatisfied with your work. Like, if you're British, you gotta understand that he's pissed. Like, he's really pissed at me. But let's say if you're, I don't know, Slavic, you're gonna think, oh, he's just a little unhappy. It's good. So that's the thing. It's like you have to be aware of these different points and different ways of expression and the little things that the different cultures do when they use the language differently, because the British are, the masters of understatements, right? Or like the French, they're never happy with anything. If Americans are gonna say awesome, they're gonna say not bad. so it's kind of like so even like. But yeah, returning to the metaphors, I kind of caught your previous talk about Madeline was talking about frames, and you were talking about how fascinating it is that you can like put two minds together or several minds together and get something. And I got reminded of the metaphor again of seven blind men and an elephant.
Yes.
Where so one blind man is kind of like touching the trunk and is saying that, well, the elephant is like a snake, which is kind of like a metaphor, right? The other one is touching, oh, it's like a column, whatever. And so they all use some kind of analogies, but they don't really see the whole elephant. So I'm a little bit more pessimistic than you are, Shrikant, about, people getting together and actually finding, seeing the elephant together, right? So, yeah. And so one last thing about the limitation of metaphors. Well, this is it comes from linguistics, right? For example, if we say time flows, so we're using the metaphor of water or river, but we're never going to say time is wet. So we're only using one aspect of our physical experiences to describe something. So we're not going to use it to the whole degree, but this is just like a little side remark. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Victoria. So the elephant story, and looking at different cultures, it's kind of like I'm optimistic in the sense that if somebody wants to do it, they can do it. That's always within their power. It does require a lot of work. It requires a lot of patience. It requires that. And, at 52 Living Ideas, that's what we've been doing. So we decided about like 2 years ago that, okay, we're going to look at China, India, and the ancient West, and to see them together. And we did a very deep dive into it, character by character dive into the Sanskrit and into the Mandarin. And, we're trying to use Greek in the Old Testament. So all of that is just so enriching, so enriching. It's a question of how much effort you want to put in, because most people, like if you have the attitude of saying, if somebody has the attitude of saying, look, I don't want to make any effort, then you stick with everything that you have. You stick with your group, you stick with the language that you have. And as long as the world doesn't change that much, you kind of, okay, you'll be able to kind of function within that. But it's a very kind of insular, it is kind of parochial kind of way of living and approaching life. And I think as human beings, you're missing out on a lot of your own potential. Forget about the potential of the rest of the world if you do that. So I consider it as not that everybody will do it, but it's possible for people to do it. And to the extent to which people do it, there are times where, there are these kind of renaissances where people are doing it on a fairly robust scale. Then there are times where groups of different kinds start to kind of pull back and fight against one another because of that. So there is all of that dance going on. And so it's kind of, I'm saying that it's just reality that there is cause for optimism and cause for pessimism, both at the same time. And history is full of both. So thank you. All right, let's take the next question, which is by DLJ. Is there an equivalent of metaphors in other means of communication, like body language, and pheromones and all kinds of things. Is there equivalent of metaphors? Does anybody want to hazard a question on hazard an answer on that? Joe.
I mean, I don't know if this actually even counts as an answer. I mean, but wouldn't sign language be a way of actually, it's body language in a way? I mean, it's a way of communicating, but I don't know if that counts.
I wouldn't say that, because it's using that, that's very interesting. I'm really fascinated with sign language because it is using like hands and gestures in order to do that. But what it is trying to capture is English. It is trying to capture, it is trying to capture the meaning itself using different things. It's not like body language itself, where there are no concepts involved. You're trying to come up with concepts using hands. So it's a kind of a language. If I have to talk, go ahead, Joe. Sorry to interrupt.
No. I mean, I was just thinking out loud. So that was cool.
So then what I would say is that there's absolutely something. The thing is that language is such a powerful tool, and the extent to which it uses metaphors and the sophistication and the depth and the metaphors over metaphors and the systems of metaphors, it's just incredibly complex. But some such thing happens, like the fragrances that are used instead of pheromones. Maybe an example, but perhaps maybe fashion, the way in which you can wear clothes in order to suggest some things that are there. So something like that I can think of. I don't think it's a satisfactory answer. DLJ, do you have a satisfactory answer to your question?
No.
Okay.
Short answer. Yeah, no, I think it has to be, I think, pheromones, for example, are not in the conscious realm. So I think that there's a relationship to consciousness. And I don't mean consciousness in the Vedantic sense. I mean it in the awake, aware sense. Yeah. Well, maybe I'm just not, because it's unconscious, therefore I can't see it. So it's entirely possible it does happen, but it's not visible to me.
No, that's a great, actually a great line, because I think because it is conscious and it can be passed from person to person, what we have built in with our language is something which is like orders of magnitude higher than what we were able to do before with sign languages, with facial expressions, whose range is limited. So this is like, especially with writing, what we've been able to do with language that has made civilization possible, which is at a completely different scale. So I think though there may be like rudimentary precursors of metaphors somewhere, it is a quantum leap. I certainly think it's a quantum leap, and the fact that it is conscious, the fact that we can store the results of it in memory, in writing, fact that we can pass it back and forth, build on one another, one another's work, all of that makes possible the toolkit of metaphors in language to be like orders and orders of magnitude.
Toolkit is right, because words are thinking tools. So absolutely right on that. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you, DLJ. Next up is going to be Katie.
Well, I would make the argument that body language is not universal, that people's experiences are also impacting how they're experiencing something. So you might say, like, I'll give my example of not getting invited to a party. If you've been invited to so many parties, that it's like nothing to you. And if you are only invited to 5 parties, it's like pain to you, or it's like little trauma or something like that. So your experiences get into your physical. I'm not sure whether that's, but I would just argue it's not, body language is not universal. There's both components in there.
Thank you, Katie. Next up is Victoria. Victoria, go ahead.
Yeah, I kind of answered that question in the chat already, because I think the difference between, let's say, pheromones and body language would be in that they're purely physical, or they are initially physical in their nature, whereas language, the language that we use to communicate, it's abstract, which is well, it's kind of like a combination of form and idea, right? So we've got the meaning and the form, that, you know, the way the words are formed. So and then if you have the combination of meaning and form, then you can put different put the same object in different categories, right? Like you can say, oh, this is a rose, oh, this is a flower, oh, this is a plant. So you can have several concepts that correspond to one physical object. And in this way, I believe that that's why we can have metaphors in languages, but not in, let's say, body language. I think it would be very confusing if we started using metaphors in body language. But what I just thought about, for example, if we think about music or art, those will have metaphors. Because very often when you look at a painting and when you listen to some music, you get like a tune that is going down or that is like in minor, and then you get certain kind of feelings. So I would say that maybe those kind of language, which is not language and words, but they're still a language, they would be maybe built-in metaphors related to the colors that the artist is using, or like the notes and chords that are being used. Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks. That brings us to the next questions. You know what? People are not generating enough questions, so I'm going to convert everything people say into questions. So let's look at art. You know, art and metaphor, because you know, art uses, like, you know, the example that Victoria is giving of music, right? The lifting line, the quickening of pace, and making it more serene. And so there is these movements in sound itself that people use. Similarly, in visual arts, you know, you have people using, you know, different techniques to produce different effects. So something, a certain thing about the line, certain thing about the face, communicating something very, something abstract, something more removed from that, the physical thing. I mean, that's what art does. And so that it's very interesting to see, you know, look at that. Let's see. So that, but I don't want to go too much into music and visual art, because I want to keep focused on the literature. It's, I mean, on language itself. So now, Madeline, go ahead.
Whoops. Okay, there I go. Well, I was thinking about the difference between, this conversation has led me to think about the difference between metaphor and deception. So let's take a sort of intermediate case like the octopodes. A male, a smaller male who's trying to get close to a female when there's a bigger male around, will change its coloration so that it looks like another female and doesn't present a threat. So I don't know, I mean, we'd call it a trickery or a lie, but it could also kind of be seen as a metaphor. I don't know what other people think of that.
Thank you. Thank you. It's kind of, it's in the area of kind of visual communication. So I'm going to let that pass. Let's talk about, you know, what are the questions you have about language? So one history, you know, we've been studying, you know, Tao Te Ching, Bhagavad Gita, and the Bible. So let's look at some aspects, you know, some lessons that we learned from that. Did you have trouble? What was the experience going through Tao Te Ching? What was the experience going through Bhagavad Gita? They are from very different cultures. The metaphors are very, very different. You know, let's take Tao Te Ching, for example, okay? And let's look at how language is used there. You know, it is so close to nature, and it is trying to capture in this beautiful poetry how nature moves and it is inviting you gently to move like nature. And it is showing you the simplicity and the power that you can have when you do that. And all of that is done indirectly. You know, my favorite line, a favorite capturing of Tao Te Ching is by Bruce Lee, the martial artist. Be like water, my friend. And look at how beautifully it captures that. Now that is like quintessentially the Tao Te Ching way of capturing it. And that actually reflects even the way in which the characters work in Mandarin, that each of the characters is a picture by itself. And so I want to put that on the table. You know, what did you learn from that? So that's one angle I want to put. I lost the track here. Ava, where are you next?
Yes. Well, I was just thinking as you're saying this, and I was thinking that, for example, we are talking about metaphors. We have metaphors in our everyday, you know, common everywhere. But when we look at those sacred books or texts or more classical, we can see that the metaphors are much more elaborate. They are deeper, right? And the metaphors we have mostly nowadays are very much reflecting our 21st century technological based in our pragmatic utilitarian everyday, whereas the metaphors we have in sacred text or classical literature, they take into more deeper feelings, and it's related to the time. We don't really have time nowadays to keep deep analogies or metaphors. But we don't have time for reflections because the metaphors make us reflect. And we are running out of time, right? Everybody is always without time to reflect. So that's what came to my mind when you're talking about in terms of language, how in, you know, more classical literature or text, the metaphors can be more elaborate, makes us to think more and deeper. Yeah, thank you.
That's a beautiful point. That's a beautiful point. I'd never thought of that. That the metaphors that we are looking at in these ancient works, they're actually so integrated. You know, they suggest such a rich set of connotations along with it, instead of this kind of one trick metaphors that allow you to think sequentially, like this one thing, like be like water, for example, right? In that one simple statement, there is just so much. There is the power, there is the smoothness, there is the way of adjusting to things, but this inexorable, power, it's, continuously transforming itself, never standing still. So many different aspects of it is just captured in that. So thank you, Ava, very much. Next up is going to be Katie, Joe, and DLJ. Katie.
Yeah, I like Be Like Water because it's flexible and yet it's very elemental. Like it's behind so much of life. And in the Bible, there's a lot I really enjoy, especially as I've gotten more into gardening. I really enjoy the farming metaphors because it really, you like planting a seed takes a lot of time. So it's like you reap what you sow, but it takes, you plant in one season and you harvest in another.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Katie. Next up is Joe, followed by DLJ. Joe.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you understand something like specifically the Gospel of John without understanding metaphors.
You can't understand anything without understanding.
I mean, you're right. I mean, but with that, I can think of like the living water, even the idea of the concept of a sun. I'm trying to think of the idea of law itself. There's God's law and there's the legal law, which is there's a distinction there. There's also the idea of rebirth is a way of actually understanding like what it means to be to transcend your previous life. So I mean, that's the idea of bread. I mean, the whole entire thing is really just based on metaphors. So I mean, so it provides provides a lot of depth to the story itself, how well you use those metaphors actually.
That's beautiful, beautiful point, Joe. Great point. So let me elaborate on it. Let's look at air, water, and earth, right? Liquid, solid, and gaseous, right? And how it is used in the Bible and how powerful it is used. I mean, let's start with air, right? The word in Greek, it is pneuma. Pneuma means air, and pneuma also means spirit. Both. So it is the breath, it's the Holy Spirit. It is the, the wind goes where it will. And then, in John 3, when he's talking about the wind goes wherever it is called pneuma. And then he talks about the spirit, and that is also pneuma. It's the same. And it is rightly translated in one place as wind and one place as spirit. Then there is water. So and the breath is about, the breath of life. This is spiritual life that is being captured there. And then there is the living water. So there is water, there is physical water, which is being used. And then it's saying you will have, a source of living water at the core of your heart. And there, the fountain and all the thing about this unending ability to produce and to give and to flow comes through with the living water. And then with bread, there is, you don't live by bread alone. You have got the physical thing that sustains you. At the same time, you need to build things spiritually that will sustain you too. And that is more important. So it uses, bread. I'm the bread of life. I am, I'm giving you living water and, breathing the Holy Spirit. All of them are deep metaphors which underlie all of the gospel. And Joe, you're right. How can you do Gospel of John without these metaphors?
The word itself is representative of God.
Yes, exactly. So you have word, right? In Genesis, God speaks and creates things to words. And then here, all things were made through the word. And then the word became flesh. So you have concepts that transform your life. They become part of life that you can see in person. So it's like there is a combination of words, emotions, actions, all building on one another. And then you have the metaphor of Jesus, which is where all of these things are brought together and is presented to you as the ideal, which is far more easy to grasp than pure words or just actions or just emotions. All of these three things are brought together in this one. This is what Eva was talking about, this power of this integrated metaphor to present that. All right. Next up is going to be, let's see, DLJ followed by Victoria and Joe. DLJ.
Yes, I feel like you told us off because we're not coming up with enough questions. So here's one. Why? Why do we do it when it potentially is confusing? Why don't we just stick to plain verbal boring stuff? I mean, there's an inbuilt answer in there because it's that richness makes, well, I don't want to answer it. I'll let other people answer it first, but why, how did it come to be? And why particularly are there things like the up, down, in, out? Why is that so prevalent? And I do have an answer, but I'm putting it out there as a question.
Sure. Let's do that. This is good. This time you have an answer also, and thank you for not telling the answer beforehand. Let other people solve the problem. So why do you use metaphors? Why don't you just speak literally? So that's a question. So we'll go. I want to have Victoria and Joe go, and then we will take this question. Okay, Victoria.
Okay, so then I will not answer this question.
No,
I was going to answer this, but
you can always answer. It's flexible, so you can answer if you want.
Okay. So the answer is because we cannot do without them, just like what we were talking about in the beginning, because we cannot put our abstract concepts in other words, because we use the spatial or whatever, the temperature concepts to map onto our abstract thinking, and that's how we understand the world. So it's not that we're trying to make it more beautiful, we just cannot do without it. But this is kind of leads me into what I was going to say. I feel like, when we started talking about the Bible and how, in the past metaphors used to be more beautiful than at present, I think we're confusing a little bit poetic metaphors and conceptual metaphors, which we're talking about today. Because the metaphors we're talking about today, they're entrenched. They're not, they're not poetic. They're not supposed to make something more beautiful. Up and down, in and out, cold and warm. This is just like how we understand the world. Whereas if we, talk about planting the seed in the Bible, yes, this is a metaphor for whatever, right? So this is not, and why this metaphor would be used in the Bible? Because it would be related to what people saw around. So like, I'm just kind of like switching from, the up and down metaphors to the poetic ones. So yes, those metaphors are poetic. Why are we not using them today? Because who plants seeds these days? Like metaphors should connect people to the reality that they live in. That's why these days we have so many metaphors related to technology. I don't know, maybe it's boring for some people. I love technology. Young generations have come up with totally new means of using metaphors in memes, in short TikTok videos. They use a different format because they can, but they're still metaphors and they're relevant to show something that they stand for. But those are not the metaphors that Lakoff and Johnson are talking about. The ones that Lakoff and Johnson are talking about, they relate to abstract thinking. And something that I was going to say is that, like, I think later in their works, they had access to MRI data, and the MRI shows that the same neurons are firing when we talk about warm weather and warm feelings. So in our brain, our neural maps are the same for up and down in physical space and up and down in moral space, for example. But anyway, so that's like a lot of stuff. So thank you.
Right. Okay, wonderful. This is such an amazing conversation. Thank you, folks. So I'm going to comment. I'm going to give my answer to DLJ's question, and then I'm going to talk about the seeds, and then I'm going to talk about metaphors at a later stage. So the short answer to DLJ's question is that the pure, literal, boring stuff is simply metaphors that you've forgotten were metaphors. They too are metaphors. It's just that you're not aware of them, and you're just using them without that, and you think that they are something different than metaphors. No, they're just metaphors, are corpses of metaphors that you're using, and they look boring because you've forgotten the life in them. But if you are aware of the life in them or use metaphors, you're just simply aware of them. So it's all metaphors. So that's my short answer. Now, in terms of seeds, the thing is that, each time, so this is, again, it relates to the question of culture. Each culture uses what they are familiar with in order to talk about abstract things. So the Bible is using fish, and it is using seeds, and it is using water. Tao Te Ching is using water. It is using valleys and mountains and things like that. Things that they see, they're experiencing it, and they're using it to absolutely talk about not quote unquote poetical things, but abstract things. So they are serving the same function. It appears to us to be particularly beautiful and poetic because we are not using those metaphors in our day-to-day use right now. So that's why they're producing in us what Owen Barfield calls felt transformations of consciousness. Just like you got a metaphor from a different language, you say, aha, I never really thought of looking at the elephant in this particular way. But so it's the same thing, it's just transposed in time. To give you an example of how dynamic the metaphors are, I'm going to take the example of railroads, which is my favorite example of metaphors. You know, it's not only that the physical things that are around us produce metaphors, but even things that we build start producing metaphors of all kinds. So all of these metaphors did not exist before the railroads. And then railroads came along. And then you had expressions like, oh, I want to send it express. Let's backtrack. Just the ticket. Fast track. He's being railroaded. Don't be derailed. He doesn't make the grade. Don't be sidetracked. Don't go off track. Have a one-track mind. You're living on the wrong side of the track. He's just letting off steam. He's blowing smoke. He has a tunnel vision. He sees the light at the end of the tunnel. Be streamlined. Keep on the track. Bells and whistles. That's the ticket. Chugging along. Fire in the belly. That's a train wreck. That's a freight train. And that's the end of the line. All railroads. Okay, so you take something and you use it to describe some phenomena in your consciousness, in society, in culture, that you can describe better, to point to better with a metaphor. So it's a very dynamic process. Next up is Joe. Joe, go ahead.
So I have a question actually that I can pose. Is that when is a metaphor inappropriate? And I'll provide an example. Like, so the idea of time is money is one that is used, and it's constantly used, right? But that's not always the case, because you could be speeding up to do something that's really not smart. So you could be, the idea of optimization would be better as an idea of money. But, you know, people will use that term and use it as a measure when it's not necessarily a good measure. So when is a metaphor inappropriate and inaccurate? And, you know, why do it? And I think it's partly because...
Don't answer it yet. Don't answer it. No. You can answer it later on. Let's put the questions first and then answer it. DLJ, what's your answer to your question?
Oh, right. So the question relating as to why there's such the ups and the downs and the ins and the outs and all that. So why is there such a preponderance of those? Although there's warm and hot, you know, there's others as well. As Victoria pointed out, it's abstract. It's because of what the mind is. The mind is the body's navigation system, navigating through what? Our environment, right? So there's the physical related ones, forward and back and up and down and so on. But there's also social navigation. So there's going to be social metaphors as well to be able to navigate in the social setting. So yeah, and time as well. So space, time, and social. There's probably a few other categories as well, like hot and warm. I was imagining. No, that's going to be physical. But anyway, yeah, it's part of the navigation system. So I think it's almost inevitable that's going to be the preponderance of things is going to be navigation related.
That's beautiful. That's excellent. You know, Julian Jaynes has a whole piece on this in his book, Origin of Consciousness. The second chapter on consciousness is all about that. He's actually going much further than most of these folks. He's saying consciousness is analog of reality. So you're actually building a simulation chamber and you're trying to navigate within it. You're saying, I could go this way, I could go this way. And so it's like your what he calls your analog eye is mapping out all of these, and metaphors are the tools through which all this, you know, navigation system is built to choose all of this folks, all of these things. All right. Joe's question: when is use of metaphors wrong? What's the wrong use of metaphors? Would you like to say anything about it? Okay, Joe, you're the only one who knows the answer to the question. Go ahead.
No, can I just quickly chip in?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Wrong is very judgmental, Joseph. I think you're being judgmental there.
What's that?
Good for you.
Wrong. It's right or wrongness is very subjectively judgmental there. So I think that's what I'm struggling with. Can it be wrong?
It can. So yeah, no, I mean, I don't think it is. So let me explain. So this idea that it's inappropriate. Time is money. So you're insinuating that the time that it takes you to do something is costing you something, right? It's costing you money. And you apply that to a business process, let's just say. And you use that as a metaphor and saying, this is what is true, right? This is accurate. But it doesn't do something. You may be doing something faster, but you'll never ask yourself whether you ought to be doing it in the first place. So it would be actually inappropriate maybe to even apply that metaphor in that particular instance, because it may be something much deeper than just time is money. So that's where I think if you apply it too often, not that it's not true, but if you apply it too often, that it leads to something that is a less than optimal outcome, which is actually, it's supposed to be expressing something so that you can understand something, as opposed to, that's my thought.
Thank you. I want to just give you examples of how big this time is money metaphors, again, from Lakoff. You're wasting my time. This gadget will save you hours. See, again, it's like save and money. So you're using the same terms for money and time here. I don't have the time to give you. How do you spend your time these days? That flat tire cost me an hour. I have invested a lot of time in her. I don't have enough time to spare for that. You're running out of time. You need to budget your time. Put aside some time for ping pong. Is that worth your while? Do you have much time left? He's living on borrowed time. You don't use your time profitably. I lost a lot of time when I got sick. Thank you for your time. So this is examples of time. Let's go to Madeline, followed by Victoria. Madeline.
Yes, this is along the lines of what Joe was saying. I think a very manipulative use of metaphor would be starting with the fact that no metaphor maps perfectly onto what it is you're trying to convey. So the example before was time is a river. It flows like a river, but on the other hand, we don't say time is wet. So if you had a metaphor that mapped partly onto something and you were trying to sway people's opinions, you would use the rest of that metaphor to also frame the question or the problem or the situation in order to bring them over to your way of thinking, but without ever saying that you were trying to do that.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Madeline. That's a great point. That is used all the time. That is used all the time. But the solution there is to understand the use of the metaphor so well that you can see it happening instead of just reacting to it. The classic examples that we have looked at is, this is very, very common in politics. We consider pro-life and pro-choice. Choice is good and life is good. So both parties are kind of claiming something good and saying that I am pro that. It's really, so it's, they're basically trying to say, oh, that other party, they are anti-choice. Other party, they are anti-life. So they're trying to surreptitiously say that I'm good underneath the use of the metaphor. So it is kind of using a term to have kind of positive connotations in order to imply a lot more, and a lot of that goes on. But if you are on the premise of trying to see what the metaphors are and continuously saying that, look, I want to keep focused on the territory. What is this actually? and try to use maps just as maps and keep, your mind open to maps. That's a way of dealing with that. Next up is Victoria, followed by Ava. Victoria.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough to, to only consider like time is money as a map, because like, look, so all of those examples that you read, well, not necessarily money, but time as a resource. This is how we understand time in most contexts. So it's kind of tough not to think about it as a resource, but I guess maybe it's good to have it in mind that this is our Western thinking. I don't know, we should ask some Asian speakers whether they also use it as a resource, or whether they have some different metaphors for it, because it's kind of like it's so embedded in our abstract thinking. But I guess to answer Joseph's question about time is money, maybe you should not be using it out of business context, right? Because money implies that it's, so you're doing some business. On the other hand, I think we can still use it as a resource that we give to people we love. So it's still going to be a metaphor. We cannot get out of it. Like, this is one of those metaphors that, like, that's what I was saying. We cannot really do without a metaphor with the word time. Sometimes it flows, sometimes it flies, sometimes it passes by, right? And sometimes time is a resource, and all the metaphors we're using should be used appropriately, which is in their context, in their situation. And whoever said this, maybe you, Shrikant, or whoever was saying, speaking before me, that definitely, yeah, we can use metaphors to manipulate people's thinking, right? For example, let's say we're going to frame our company as a family. That's one metaphor, and it brings the whole set of association with it, right? Like our relationships towards it, like with each other and stuff. On the other hand, if we frame the company as a machine, and we're cogs in the machine, which has been done, right? And the whole society could be like a machine, a well functioning machine. Then we have a totally different understanding of ourselves as part of this society or company. They're both valid. They achieve different purposes. They help people understand the world. I guess the main takeaway from today's presentation would be like what you said, Shrikant, to be aware of those different frameworks, different frames in which we can understand things. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. The other thing, other important thing in dealing with these metaphors is to look at when they came to be. For example, all of these metaphors about time, these are like 19th century. I think I don't know exactly how far back. I've not looked at it in great amount of detail, because I have this dictionary of idioms which I recommend, which gives you actually the date on which the first usage of it, and you will see certain patterns to it. So, for example, starting with the 19th century, where Industrial Revolution really took off, and our modern world as we are living right now came to be, that's where this way of thinking about time came. I'm thinking, we've looked at Tao Te Ching, we have looked at Bhagavad Gita, and we have looked at Gospel of John. Do any of them think of time in this way? No, this is all later. The way they think about time is dramatically different. So that's another reason to be aware of history of languages and history of cultures, because you don't have to buy into the currently prevalent ideas, currently prevalent ways of talking, because if you use these terms, you're going to think that way. They are appropriate for a certain context. They came to be for a certain reason, and they were not there before. Word usages come to be, they live for some time, and then they die. So there is a life to them as well. The fact that we are living in the midst of them doesn't mean that they are kind of facts of nature or even facts of culture. They are just facts of current cultures. It's that they are in the spirit of time, not necessarily the spirit of depths. So kind of understanding the history of language allows you to be open to that. Thank you. Next up, let's see, is Ava, followed by Joe. Eva.
Yeah, Srikan, that's what I would actually mention regarding to time, because it's a kind of reflection of the Western anxiety, and that was starting 18th and 19th century, as you were mentioning, in the historical time, because other cultures wouldn't be so much obsessive. You know, there's an obsession with time in our Western society, and we are all complaining all the time about the lack of time and deadlines. All this create a certain anxiety, and you can also think of time, you know, as being the center in the 19th century in the studies of physics, for example, even 18th century. So there is a kind of obsession in the Western society about time, in which indigenous communities, they wouldn't really be concerned about time, because it's not about time they are concerned. The interest is to take time. Is the opposite, right? So yeah, so that's what, just to complement what saying. Thank you.
Thank you, Eva. Great point. Next up is Joe. Joe, go ahead.
So yeah, I think I just maybe had said it, didn't say it clearly. The reason I was saying time is money is an example where a metaphor ought not be used. Is that not the metaphor itself isn't valid? It's that metaphors influence actions. And the idea that how we then determine that time is the resource that we're trying to save. And that's the action that we'll take. But then that action that we're taking, we'll forget to ask whether it needs to be taken at all. And that's what fools us into thinking that, well, maybe I need to do this fast. No, you don't. No, you need to not do it. And so that's where I'm saying is that the action as it causes you to take is actually inappropriate. And the reason why that is that not that time can't be equated to money or a resource. It's that it's overused. It's that it's used too many times. And when you use a metaphor too often, it loses its validity. And that's where I find that when is it inappropriate to use a metaphor? When you're using it all the time. No pun intended.
Thank you. Thank you, Joe. I mean, it's like words are tools. And those were tools produced for a certain purpose. And if you use it wrong, they're going to have negative effects. I like the line from If, to see your words used by somebody to make, what is the exact term? Joe, you will know it. Go ahead.
Wait a minute. If you could build it up with worn out tools.
This is to bear to hear your words used by knaves to make traps for knaves. So words words can be used in that way, So, and the thing is that the crucial thing. Go ahead.
Twisted like knaves. Yeah, I remember.
Yes.
Sorry about that.
Yes, twisted. Yes, wonderful. So the thing is that is what you have to take the responsibility for. You can't blame the words. The words are there. They serve some legitimate purpose. And if you're trying, if you end up using it, outside of that, then that's, that's on you. So I think just being aware of this whole history of words, all its positive things, all the tendency we have of being lazy and kind of mindlessly use words and in a reactive way without seeing whether it is appropriate for that context. All of that is part of our human nature. And so we have to be aware of that's what we will have if we don't watch out. Mike, 2 minutes.
I don't think I have 2 minutes worth this time. The CBT and NLP and DBT as how the people use the try to cure borderline personality and PTSD make use of metaphor as to how the mind is organized to try and create a catalog of devices that help people recover from problems. And there's a lot of thought that has gone into both of these areas. And in terms of how you convince people of things, some people are visual and some people are oral, and some people are gut feeling. So people say, "I see what you're thinking there," or "I hear what you're thinking," or "I know how you feel about this problem." So and that creates ways of creating metaphors and language that can change PTSD problems or hard over mind thoughts. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. 1 minute, 15 seconds. That's a record, Mike. Thank you. Next up is Victoria. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I wasn't going to say anything.
Okay.
I'm
Okay.
feeling it's the end of the conversation. So,
Okay.
you know,
Yeah, we're coming to the end of the conversation. So, so comments on what did you get from this conversation? Who would like to go? Who would like to talk about it? Go ahead and type an exclamation mark. What did you think? Victoria, would you like to say something? You're new to this. What did you think?
I love the conversation. Thank you for organizing it, because I have been to so many different meetups, and sometimes only 1 or 2 people speak. And this time I felt that lots of people were contributing. As somebody who actually wrote a thesis on this, I enjoyed it no less. You know, so that was definitely on a good level, and I'm definitely going to come back and participate more. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Victoria. Joe, how was it?
I was talking with no. Sorry about that. No, I thought it was fantastic, and I think that it actually builds on what we've been talking about with language all along with Phil, and I think that this is understanding metaphors and their limits. I think is actually helps us to understand not only what actions to take, but understand the concepts people are trying to convey in the first place. So I think that this is I liked it. I loved it.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. All right, folks, if you have any comments about the meetup itself, go ahead and type an exclamation mark, and let me tell you what's coming up. Tomorrow, we are continuing our look at the Gospel of John, and what we're doing is that we're just going to do a discussion like we did today. And what I'm asking you to bring is the most profound questions you have about Christianity. And we'll take everybody's questions, we'll put them on the table, and we will vote on all the questions, and we'll discuss only the ones that people, once getting maximum number of votes, we'll do that in that order. So it's going to be highly interactive. So that's going to be tomorrow, Thursday. On Friday, we are launching a series on Power of Myth by Joseph Campbell, and Brian is leading that. So it's going to be, it's an amazing, amazing work. This is basically based on Jungian psychology of archetypes, of looking at mythologies across cultures and trying to see patterns common to all of them. So this is actually very close to what we're doing here, but this is like constellation of concepts instead of individual words, but that across cultures. So it's really great work. And I'm sure, Brian does a fantastic job on these things. So that's going to be a monthly series. On Saturday, we are launching this series on one of my favorite thinkers, Louis Sullivan, and his my absolute favorite book of his called A System of Architectural Ornament. We've got two architects, one designer, one literary person, one philosopher, 2 philosophers, I think 3 architects, something like that, all going to talk about how do you design? How Louis Sullivan's principle is that form follows function. And this is about how do you make form follow function? How do you design so that everything that you design is living? This applies to what you say too. People are passing on dead words just because they don't want to put their skin in the game here. This is all about how do you do that? And it's going to be spectacular. And this particular episode, this Saturday at 2 p.m., we are looking at the introduction to it, which really lays out his theory of man's powers, of who human beings are, what capabilities we have. So how do we need to design for us? We have all this deep nature. We have physical nature. We have emotional nature. We have intellectual nature. We have spiritual nature, moral nature. How do we bring it all together so everything that we do and say does justice to each of these levels? How do you design like that? That's what the book is about. So don't miss that. On Sunday, we're going to present Don Brittle is going to present his real innovative theory of physics called the field structure theory. That's going to be at 8 p.m. On Monday, we do poetry, including collaborative poetry with Maritza. And Tuesday, we're going to do Confucius. We're going through Confucius Analects, continuing our Chinese series. Jason and Amon are going to do the translation for our group. And then on Wednesday this time, we are going to go, let's see, this is going to be the second Wednesday. So what is it going to be? I'm sorry. Joe, what is the second Wednesday? It's not neuroscience. It's not language.
No, I believe it's bringing
it's
3 ideas together, 3 ideas together.
So what we're going to do is that we're going to take 3 thinkers, whom at least 2 of which we are going to be familiar with. And we're going to compare the ideas, compare and contrast the ideas. This is the same principle of cross-cultural things, except amongst 3 great individuals talking about one particular topic. Last time we did that on dialogue. Took 3 thinkers on dialogue. So amazing meetups coming up. So join us. See you folks. Bye, everybody.